Good morning. Sometimes I really dislike this platform and I feel like quitting. There's clearly a hidden hand, behind the scenes, hiding things, suppressing things, and that's really disgusting. But sometimes things just align. I don't know. The other day I was listening deep in thought, taking notes, and the video stopped and I just kept doing my thing. And the next video that started was exactly about the same subject, but with a different point of view. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Sometimes this algorithm actually works. Sometimes, but not always. This morning, before leaving the house, I was listening to this very passionate person. They were a researcher, a scientist, a writer. They were very, very invested in this investigation. It was about in this subject of investigation. It was about family, the family dynamics, and they were explaining what's been done to families since these past 100 years. You see, the eugenics program never stopped. It just went underground. They just changed name and changed faces, and but it's still going. And now it's becoming more public. They have a technology, a selective technology. Who's gonna be and who's not gonna be? People are like choosing on a catalog, who's going to be the next generation. So weird. All these weird laws they've been passing since these past 20 years aligns with that. So according to this person, this woman, she said that they are completely uh, distorting what family is, distorting it to the point that it's just going to create misery. It's just going to create, sick people. This is what the elites want. And you kind of wonder what's going on. Well, it's always been like this. There are some in this world that they don't really see the world like the most of us. They see the world differently. Their frontal cortex is there, but it works or it doesn't work at all. Or I was going to say it works differently. No, it just doesn't work at all. So they wish to, project how they see things to everybody, to the whole world. I was taking notes about this other researcher, and they said the four horsemen of the apocalypse concerning civilization and family are incest, polygamy, the gender blurring, and the kiddie stuff. Those are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. If you allow these four, it will sign the end of a civilization. The host was having constantly, dissonance. The host was not. I probably comes from a broken family, and the guest was putting it plain and simple. What happens when the roles are not present? A funny thing, that most people don't know, and now I found out there are plenty of studies and research how to raise a child without a father. It's actually very common nowadays, but there's zero research, zero scientific research about how a child would fare if it was only raised by a father, because they claim the child needs, in the first year or two, maybe more, it needs 100% skin to skin contact with the milk, with mother's breasts. 100%. So that's why they don't do any studies about that. They do it in animals, but not in humans. It's forbidden. So you can't really contrast or compare how would the child would fare. Is it better with a man or is it better with a woman? Some people defend it will be men actually are better, children are better off with fathers. Others defend the opposite. I don't know. But the skin and skin is true. But the man could also, you know, hold the baby, right? And just feed it with the bottle, But it would mean that the father would have to stay, close contact, for the first 2 years. It's essential. That's how people, raise their children in the past. I was listening to this other esoteric, it was a bit more esoteric and magical and stuff. And he said, in traditional cultures, mommy had the baby crouching. She crouched. She didn't lay down. She crouched like she was taking a huge, poop. She crouched. Then the baby would come out. They would cut the umbilical cord, some 50 centimeters, long, or 20, something like that. They wouldn't cut it immediately, uh, to the stem. No, they would leave some 20, 30 centimeters, stick to the baby, and the thing would dry out naturally because the baby would feed in the remaining nutrients and minerals that was there, because the whole coming to this world is quite tiring, not just for the baby but for the mother. So those would represent some extra energies, and the mother would consume the placenta if she would desire, like animals in the wild, or if you had any types of other food. I mean, I've heard people saying they suddenly had a craving for liver, after giving birth. Of course, um, you just depleted tons and tons of energy, right? During labor, now you want to replenish. And what is the most nutritious food? Liver. Yeah, or the placenta. So then the mother would stay with the child without taking a shower for the next 3 days. They would stick together, glued together. He said the baby would, lay down in mother's stomach, and some of them even looked for the nourishment, for the nipple. They would search for it intuitively without giving them any help. So those 3 days without showering would ensure that a chemical bond was made. That is crucial. What do they do nowadays in hospitals? They immediately separate both of them and give them a good wash with rubber gloves, and they take samples, and they put them all in the same room, and everybody's crying, and then they pick up and bring the baby all clean and neat, and after some hours, and the mother is like, oh, is that my real baby? Maybe they switched it, who knows? But nobody cares. And the thing that is important is when someone has a baby, mother and father, they are all pregnant. They're all going through hormonal, bonding. They're going through a big hormonal bonding, and they have to be close to the baby. They have to be around the baby. If this dynamic doesn't happen, some mothers may abandon their child. It happens a lot. They didn't reproduce with the right person, or there's something chemically that goes wrong, and they just abandon them. It's very common. You see. But anyway, modern day practices are all messed up. They immediately start traumatizing people from the day they are born. When you traumatize a child, their levels of serotonin and cortisol will be higher than usual. They will always be in high alert. When someone is in high alert for the rest of the, it's not really good. That's why there's a rise in cardiovascular diseases. That's why you're having, small ones. In schools they're putting the defibrillators in schools and stuff. You kind of wonder why. Cortisol. They are in high alert all the time. I was listening to this French researcher, and she said something like, "Le petit soldat qui reste toujours en garde is like a guard that, when they are doing in duty, like those guards in front of the palaces and stuff. When they are in duty, they have to be in constant alert with their weapon in their hands, until their shift is over, right? But they have to be in constant alert, and that's what, analogy for people from the early, stages. If they get their hormones messed up at birth, if they don't bond correctly, why there's some people, you see, there are some who are born in the most loving family and they become atrocious, psychos. And why these people often, they fight for positions of power because they want to project their dysfunctionality to the whole world. So why they are doing this? I'm going to try to answer it. So I'm going to read a paragraph here. Plato strongly emphasizes that while the human soul aspires to the divine, what is the divine? The human soul naturally aspires. Oh, there's a cat over there. I don't know if you guys see it. Anyway, it's my neighbor's cat. Why does the soul aspire to the divine? The divine is what's beautiful, what's fair, justice, peace, the good, the beautiful. That's the divine, The soul aspires to the divine. Its higher achievement is to follow Zeus, not usurp him. Zeus is just a spiritual appellation. Get over it. You can switch that with anything. Buddha, Jesus, you can put anything in there. Depends on your culture. So the highest achievement is to walk with Zeus, not to usurp him. Who wishes to usurp the gods? Yeah, you know them, right? They declared some time ago, right after the French Revolution, that God is dead, and they were all celebrating, we are gods now, yay! It's these guys who are distorting humanity and imposing their insanity. Yeah? In his most important cosmological speculations, Plato uses mythical accounts because the myth, unlike the syllogism, a syllogism is a three-step deductive reasoning, something that Aristotle the idiot came about. Aristotle only cared about the deductive way of reasoning. Plato was more into the inductive, deductive, and retroductive. You see, there's three ways of reasoning, but Aristotle only cared about one because he was an humanist, see. Aristotle wanted to separate the soul, the spiritual, from science. His philosophy in the beginning was the study of the natural world and the supernatural world. It was both. It's called metaphysics. It's physics and spiritual. It's both. I mean, there's no separating them, but some people wanted to separate them. Why? Because they didn't want archetypes, mythology. They didn't want gods in their schemes. Why? Because it kind of bring people towards what's real, towards what's natural, towards the good, the beautiful, the fair, the just. And myth, unlike syllogism, has a capacity to act as a complex mirror in which we can recognize not only who we are, but also who we might become beyond our restricted early existence. So mythology helps us understand who we are, what our role is, yes, and deal with the question, what happens after death? What makes you think you are that which dies? That's the answer. You are not the meat suit that you see in the mirror. It's just a physical, manifestation of the self. The self gets separated from this meat suit and goes to the world, of the spiritual. It can return, eventually returns. So, another thing, we have to be very careful with people who use words, people who use the dialectical. You can hun your arguments, you can hun your thoughts using the dialectical. There's a lot of things that you can't really talk about, spiritual things, without using the dialect, analogy, metaphor, allegory, mythology, symbology, etc. But you have to be very careful because there's going to be a lot of people who will try to learn the dialectical to bamboozle you with sophistry. They just go around in circular, patterns, in circular rationality to bamboozle you. Even Plato himself, the ultimate task of philosophy, which involved all sorts of rational thought and logical argumentation, is not to learn dialectical methods for their own sake, but to regain the soul wings and return to the celestial abode. You see, you learn the dialectic, but only to educate yourself. But unfortunately, like I said, a lot of people just learned it to bamboozle whoever is listening. They create echo chambers using dialect. They distort reality. They use words, they change definition of words. That's one of the other things. They're constantly trying to change the definition of things. Like most recently, I think they had a going at phobia. Phobia is a rational fear, literal, existential, rational fear. It's a phobia, but they wanted to change the definition of it, of being something, something you feel like it. It's not a rational, objective fear. No, it's subjective. So it's your problem. It's you. It's not, an objective thing. It's a subjective thing. They always try to do this sleight of hand, you know, these puzzling people. That is a good book, you wanted to read because it just sticks everything together. Puzzling people. It was written by this Irish with his arse hanging out of his trousers. What's his name? I can't remember his name right now. And it's a wonderful book. The second one is also good. The continuation that will help you understand what's going on. Yeah. Why there's some they look like us, they walk like us, but they have a totally, bizarre, puzzling, scary way of seeing everything. They distort everything. It just doesn't make any sense. You are puzzled, bewildered. You are astonished. You can't even move if you're like, huh, what the hell just happened? So anyway, I think I'm going to shut up. I've been talking almost for 20 minutes. Tell me what you guys think. Have a nice day.